Happy Thursday, y'all. This is Henry here saying thank you for showing up to another Wisecrack Live. Michael will be with us in just a moment. Happy to hear from the work gang. Go for it, Josh Harris. Oh, and Matt A right after that. Logan, what kind of theater, if you don't mind me asking?
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Wisecrack Live. I missed you last week. I missed Henry last week. I missed everyone in the chat last week. So thanks for being here. We're back.
Feeling better?
What a time. Feeling solid. Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone? I don't know. If this is the thing you ever have, Henry. Do you ever have headaches? Sorry, that's a personal question. But do you ever have like bad headaches or anything? You
Yeah,
ever get a
yeah. From
migraine
time
or
to
anything like
time,
that?
I'll get pretty extreme kind of migraines. I feel that's probably one of the few things. I don't get colds or sicknesses a lot, but mentally, yeah,
Oh,
like head strain a lot.
all right. Hold on. Let me just do one thing. Camera, no, you got to get back in that setting. Okay, there we go. Um, yeah, but it was one of those things where I just, woke up in the middle of the night, horrible, horrible, horrible headache. Those ones that make you feel like physically ill, and then I couldn't go back to bed, and I felt really bad last week. So thank you for being patient with that. Vox Podcast is here, getting an abstract done for an academic conference about Superman. Julia had COVID for the first time. Well, Julia ruins my theory. Ooh, someone said Wisecrack work gang coffee mugs. I really like that idea. That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Um, and we do need merch ideas, guys. We got to get on this. Yeah, Julia, my theory has been that anyone who hadn't gotten COVID yet couldn't get it. So you disproved my scientific theory. Um, since I'm already asking personal questions, Henry, have you had COVID-19 before?
Yes.
Okay, so you can you've had it. Have you had it one
Yeah,
time,
it
multiple
sucked.
times?
I had it once last year
Hmm.
in the summer, so this was after, all
Hmm.
the lockdown stuff started getting lifting back up. But yeah, I was very sleepy for about 3 days and just mentally felt like mush.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that having it, I've had it 3 times, but I'm just someone who, like, if someone has a cold within 9 miles, like, I'm getting it. Dirkster, thank you so much, and thanks for the wish of happy times. Oh, Dennis says, "What kind of strat is that?" I think it's an American Professional 2 is the exact thing. Natasha's had it twice as well. Sana Harris was in Bali this month. That's fucking sick. Um, But yeah, I had it 3 times, and every time I've had it, it's been not as bad. Like, the first time I had it is the sickest I've ever been in my life. The second time felt like a pretty bad cold, more or less. I took it easy for, like, 4 days and watched all the seasons of Somebody Feed Phil on Netflix. But the first time I had it, I couldn't walking to the bathroom felt like I was on a death march. The second time I had it, I would go on, like, a 2-mile walk a day around the neighborhood. Um, and then the third time I had it, I just felt kinda like you described. I just felt really tired, but not horrible. Vox caught it at their last conference. Yeah, academic conferences are just asking, some Martin said, "Boo Fender, yay Jackson." Someone likes to play him some metal with thin strings. Um, but yeah, like academic conferences, talk about I mean, the academic community has to be a
Superman.
more immunocompromised community because it's a lot of inside kids. I say this as a, former academic myself. Academia is for inside kids. So if you get a bunch of inside kids together and you got an illness going around and they're all like staying up late, drinking coffee, touching each other's genitals. That's the thing. We'll get into it, guys, but I had a professor in grad school. You know what? I'll say her name. She's a scholar. She's important. Her name's Johanna Oksala. Really good Foucault scholar. Works on a lot of other stuff. And she's a very intimidating Finnish woman who wore a lot of leather. And she said to me once something like, academic conferences are just an excuse for people to fuck people that aren't their spouses or something like that. And I was like, wow, this is intimidating. Thanks for sharing that with me, Johanna Oksala. Dude Abides, updated your phone and you're loving it. The Fold, that sounds fun. Alex, the better TV dog, Eddie the Jack Russell from Frasier or Cheddar the Corgi from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I'm Eddie all day. I'm Eddie all day in that one. I'm not a corgi guy. Maybe I unconsciously don't like corgis because I associate them with British monarchy or something like that. But it's not my favorite. JJ Carter, this conversation is going to go some great places. Well, we're here. It's Wisecrack Live. It is June 15th. Can you believe it, guys? Curtis is here. Welcome, Curtis. It's already June. We're cooking in summer. Here in Los Angeles, it's gray and a little cool. We haven't had the sun in a while, so it doesn't feel very summery. But there you go. Excited to be back with you guys. We have a lot of great stuff coming at you soon. We filmed a video yesterday. It's going to be spicy. Filmed a spicy one. We didn't film it. Sorry. One's coming out soon on Marxism and another's coming out on wokeness. We're just trying to get canceled, guys. Oh, Curtis is gifting memberships. Amazing thing to do. And please like the stream. Queen Cabbage points that out. Liking the stream helps us. But yeah, we have a video coming out on what it means to be woke and why people like that word so much. We have another video coming out on Marx and communism. That one's edited by our friend Jackson. And, it's a spicy one. It's a spicy meatball. We also have a video coming out. We filmed a couple yesterday. One is on the death of online friendship. Basically, the idea, I don't know about you all. Well, this is literal. Some of you are my online friends. We're online friends, right? And I think a lot of us have made online friends in our lives, but it's becoming weird because the space that's mediated these online friendships are these platforms like Twitter and stuff like that owned by assholes. So it's that weird question of what does it mean when our digital social lives are mediated by rich assholes? So there you go. And definitely leak the steam. Let's see. And then we did a video on authenticity and reality. That one's a little weird, but it's basically the idea that like we've lost track of what it means to be authentic in this day and age, and the existence of reality TV and social media and influencer culture have created this weird world where now rather than like being authentic, we try to be authentic by performing an inauthentic version of authenticity. A lot coming at you, but we have that coming out as well. So there you go. But I think you guys will like it. I think we're hitting a nice groove right now. And thank you so much for watching the recent videos. That's been very fun for us. Speaking of recent videos, let's go through some comments. And these comments are about the conspiracy theory video and the religion video. When I pull them up, the first one I have is the one about being unhinged. Awesome. So let's just go through these comments real quick. So these are from Apparition said, I haven't felt authentic since I was 10. There you go. Someone says, how do I get the gift of membership? Well, Christopher Pierce met his wife in an AOL chat room. That's amazing. Scarlett got the Blue Sky invite. I know I haven't gotten one yet. Ryan says they're a person who's used the internet who hasn't made an online friend. I'm really sad if that has not happened. Dirkster deactivated Twitter, so this is a nice hangout. Yeah, I want to get off Twitter. I'm just like too addicted to it. It's really the only addiction app. But so this comments from the video we did. Why I already forget what it's on. Conspiracy theories. I don't know if it's me, but Michael seems more unhinged lately, and I'm all for it. Guys, I've always been this unhinged. Really, what's happened is we used to do videos in this way where I had to go to this little room and I'd read the thing and I'd be like, hey guys, have you ever wondered about blank? Well, if we read blank, we see that blank is blank. So let's get into blank on today's blank. And it was just like me being a soulless robot. And I never got to say things I really felt. So now, especially now that we're doing videos on more socially relevant topics, it's created space for me to like react to those things and how I feel. So yeah, I'm unhinged. The next one says, I like the new Wisecrack era of knowledge-based psychosis leading to semi-incoherent ramblings. It really gives, I really can't take any more, and I wish I was making this up vibes. Yeah, I mean, that's true, right? Because we can't talk about heavy, serious, weird stuff happening in reality and not acknowledge it. This comment says, my favorite conspiracy theory is that Lee Harvey Oswald is innocent and JFK's head just kind of did that sometimes. JFK's head just kind of did that sometimes. I'd never heard that conspiracy theory before. I don't know if anyone else had in the chat. Ryan Klein says, so just how much of you unhinged was edited out? I mean, there's still a lot. Jackson's here. Jackson says, can confirm. Friends has always been unhinged. I've seen it. Jackson included some stuff in the Marxism video. We'll see if it makes the final cut, where I literally said something like, don't put that in the video. And it's in the video. But because it's Jackson, I'm just like, you know what? He's so good that I inherently trust him. Also, Jackson has a video on FD Signifier's B-Sides channel where they're talking about the new Spider-Verse movie and propaganda. Everyone check that out. I want to watch it on here today. I just don't know if we're going to have time because we're kind of cramming the schedule. But please, everyone, check that out. It's just good. And, Jackson's your man to talk about propaganda. Yeah, a lot is the answer. Um, okay, the next comment was okay. So in that video, we had two scholars we quoted. One was called Daniel Pipes and Mike Wood, and I found it so funny when we were filming it that there was someone named Pipes and Wood because let's be honest, it sounded like these are two people who either worked in the trades or in pornography. I asked people to say what their jobs would be, and I really appreciate. Oh, FD was on Hassan's Twitch yesterday. I want to go check that out. That's cool. Never be sorry, Jackson. You do a great job, and you do the Lord's work. But yeah, someone gave a lot more options. So for Daniel Pipes, they put plumber, church organist, courier, network specialist, tobacco grower, didgeridoo maker, ventilation system specialist, glass blower, and porn star. Mike Wood, woodworker, park ranger, woodwinds repairman, sculptor, lumberjack, professional axe thrower, and porn star. I just great comment. I really appreciate the work they did there. This is still from the conspiracy one. This person says, I never thought of it from the grief perspective. You've been lied to. You know something is wrong, and you don't have the language to explain your feelings, which is why we should all be in therapy. As a culture, we look at these people like they are dumb. A simple justification for the sometimes crazy stuff coming out of their mouths. I assume they meant mouths. I'll try not to react like this anymore. I'm a trauma survivor and I understand not being able to explain, not having the words. We're all here together. I mean, in doing this conspiracy theory video, something I was at least thinking about, and thanks for being here. Like the stream if you haven't, but something that I was thinking about when we were making that is how it's really easy to look at people who fall into conspiracy theory rabbit holes and be like, "Oh, these are bad people. These are stupid people. These are unhinged people, whatever you want to say." But then when you think about it, and you think that a lot of us, right? And even in talking about my unhinged behavior on these videos, a lot of us are people that sometimes look around at the world and just think like, "Oh, this sucks. This doesn't feel good. This doesn't seem right. I'm not liking what's happening. Surely there has to be something else going on here, right?" Um, and we might react by doing some sort of critical analysis or something like that, um, or trying to understand the systemic reason things are happening. But a lot of conspiracy theorists are coming from the same place. My chat got so weird. It's not updating. I'm going to reload it. Um, Live chat is moved. Okay. But and I think that a lot of people that fall into the rabbit hole of conspiracy theory might be coming from this place where like maybe their life sucks. Maybe things don't seem to make sense. Maybe they're also looking at the geopolitical and economic systems and thinking this doesn't seem quite right. Now, does that mean that it's okay when you show up to a pizza parlor strapped up? It does not mean that's okay. But yeah, I think there's a way in which we could have some level of, if not full understanding, some understanding. I'm gonna just like close this and reload the chat. It just, unless the chat is dead, my thing is showing me that no one is chatting right now. Is that true, Henry? Okay, cool. Um, awesome. So sorry for any of the chats I missed. Whoa, Wisecrack is weird. It's showing me a 15-minute video from 4 months ago that it says is live right now. This is so weird, guys. Like, it's showing me right now, there's a live video on how the far right swept the world. What is wise Yeah, that's so weird. I don't know, guys. And someone said they're having chat problems too. Um, and sorry, guys, now I'm seeing the chat now. Um, and you're all saying great things, and you're all smart, and you're all beautiful. Um, yeah, someone said chat is being weird. Yeah, it is. Chat is being weird. And YouTube just showed me one of our old videos and said it was live right now. Very weird, guys. Okay, let's just keep let's keep it cruising then. So the next video we had recently, yeah, someone else had to reload the chat too, was on religion. Shouts to religion, everyone. This person said, I grew up Mormon. The tears. Okay, so in that video, speaking of unhinged stuff, I did say if anyone else had a period where someone said they can't send super chat. But I asked if anyone else had a period in their life where they jayed off and felt bad about jaying off and then asked God for forgiveness. And I had a period when I was a teenager and in college for a bit where I was involved in like the evangelical world. And I was made to feel like if I touched my penis, that I was committing a sin. And I had friends who like had apps on their computer and stuff like that that would email their friends if they watched porn and all this sort of stuff. It was an intense part of that world. So I asked if anyone else had ever felt that way, and we got a lot of comments about it. This one I thought was pretty poignant. This person said, I grew up Mormon. The tears I shed over masturbation could put out forest fires, but even that was nothing compared to the trials of coming out of the closet. Those tears should have caused a second flood. Um, Many shouts to my man for dealing with that, but their picture, their user picture is two happy dudes together. So I hope that things are cool now. But yes, so much weird stuff in the world of religion around sex. I don't know if anyone else has watched the Hillsong documentary. It's on FX, the second one about the crazy mega church. Evangelicals are weird about sex. Let's see.
The what documentary?
Okay. Oh, on Hillsong. Do you know? Wait, Julia says I didn't know that Jewish people feel like that too. Hillsong is this Australian-based mega church company, and they had a mega church in New York. And the main pastor, who was friends with like Justin Bieber and all these NBA players, uh, was like cheating on his wife and got caught, and it was a whole thing. But it's sort of a like so many things are the story of that church is like the story of the overlap of capitalism and faith. Um, a couple more comments and we'll keep it moving. This person says, deconstructed and critically thinking Presbyterian pastor here, just to share a note of appreciation for how you respectfully you handled the topic. Thanks for making liminal space between the poles of rational secularism and irrational faith for everyone who finds himself along that spectrum versus at the extremes. That makes me happy to see, because again, I think, and part of the religion video we got into, hopefully you all got to watch that. Part of the argument in the religion video is that it can be so easy for smart people like all of us, and maybe some of us who aren't theologically inclined, like the stream, if you want to go to heaven. But for a lot of us to have, I guess, like empathy for people with religious faith. But what I find more obnoxious is a type of smug atheism that wants to reduce our understanding of everything to this like crass either or between faith and reason. So yeah, so it makes me happy to know that people who are religious could watch that video and not think that we were trying to shit on them. And in particular, like one of my favorite aspects of philosophy of religion and contemporary philosophy of religion is this idea, and this comes out of the Marxist tradition. And if you saw the video, you saw there's the quote, right? So everyone knows this quote that's like, religion is the opiate of the masses. And the same way that when we're 17, right, we hear Nietzsche say God is dead, and we're like, oh, fuck yeah, God is dead. I'm not going to church anymore, Dad. And then we hear Marx say, like, religion is the opiate of the masses. And we're like, Mom, take your opium. I'm going to stay home and skateboard and not go to church. But in both cases, right, we're getting the quote wrong. We made a video about nihilism recently. You can watch that if you don't know about the truth behind the God is dead phrase. When it comes to religion being the opium of the masses, and sorry to repeat this for those of you who've watched the religion video 9 times and taken notes, but Marx's point is that religion is an opium. It's something we take to feel better or numb because the world is bad. So the thing that's bad isn't religion. It is a world that necessitates a system of belief that pushes us outside of our imminent conditions in the hope of some other world, because this world is so inadequate to the needs of our humanity. So that's like the gist of that quote. And it gives us the tools then to think about religion from the perspective of like, not is it good, bad, right, wrong, smart, dumb, but what is religion responding to? So there you go. Reclaimed Dasein said, you never skateboarded. Well, if I never skateboarded, why does my left elbow not work right? Because I shattered it when I was 14 skateboarding. I still have limited movement in that. But Reclaimed Dasein, I'll say this. I was not good at skateboarding. I wanted to be good at skateboarding, but I wasn't great. I got to the level where I could comfortably maybe do a kickflip, but that was it. Our guest that's coming on later, by the way, I should have already said this. What's up, Tristan? In the second half today, we have Sam Hoadley-Brill coming on. You might follow his Twitter account. He's a PhD student in philosophy and also someone who posts 6 skateboarding videos sometimes and has cool hair. who his project is sort of to critique and break down, you know, the way cultural Marxism gets used, CRT, wokeness, all this sort of stuff, basically right wing appropriations of philosophy. And he gets, oh, Dare Johnson, you broke your right, I broke my left. There we go. Um, but yeah, so we're excited to talk to him. One more comment, I think, or maybe one, or maybe two more. This one says, I skipped 7 of them. Ooh, I'll go back. Was that? Oh, yeah, this one, and I know I went to the Ernest one, so we'll go back to a J off one. Again, guys, I'm not really seeing new stuff in chat. It's loading like top to bottom or something like that. I'll try to keep up with it, but if I don't respond to your great chat contributions, it's because my thing is weird. I'll reload it again in a second. This person's here. Let me try to edit it. Let's see if this fixes it. The most recent one I have now is from Black is Coal. We'll see if this works. Yeah. And now I got a Vox. Okay, so we'll see if this works. And then Scarlett says I can't hear Henry.
I'm keeping
Okay.
myself muted
So
because it's more tech notes than commentary right now.
yeah. And then someone else is also having the issue with it. Okay, I grew up evangelical. One day my pastor responded to God for a message from me. I was called to become a pastor. After that, I said sorry to God every time I jade off. Next comment, going ahead too. As a religious and practicing Catholic, I enjoyed this video. I can't say I agreed with every point, but I enjoyed listening to the provided perspectives on religion and its impact on society. Guys, you shouldn't agree with everything we say in the video, but it also shouldn't make you mad. If you don't agree, why would you want to agree with everything we said? But I really appreciate that. As a Catholic boy myself, this one said, Wisecrack should do a video where they go over the most commonly misunderstood points, quotes, and philosophy and explore what they actually might mean. I like that idea. Maybe that could be like a TikTok series or something. Okay, so that's all the comments for today. So something I want to let's talk about a couple of things. Let's maybe start with the Trump thing. So guys, our president, our hero, Donald Trump, got arrested and indicted. I honestly, guys, I'm going to be honest. I don't even know that much or understand that much about what happened. I'm going to load this CNN clip and then pause it. I kind of made a decision to tap out a little bit from American electoral politics. Gordon is here, and the child labor video made them mad. Man, it made me mad too. But I kind of made a decision to tap out of caring or paying a lot of attention to electoral politics after the 2020 election. I was left feeling like both it did not help me feel happy as a person, and my involvement in that wasn't helping the world that much. And I just kind of stepped away. Natasha brings up the Legal Eagle video. Yeah, we might watch that. Let's see. Dennis says it helped if Wisecrack told us which points we shouldn't agree with. I'm going to get on that. But Trump got arrested. Let's watch a little bit of the CNN clip
outside the courthouse in Miami
because we stand with CNN.
The latest on the ground view of the security situation. Shimon, what are you seeing?
First of all, this footage looks like the OJ chase.
So, Jake, we're standing on the corner where everyone here, from law enforcement to some of the supporters, have now gathered as they get
it's kind
ready
of dumb that we just watched this.
President to drive this
way.
This
is
and
breaking
enter
news.
The courthouse. We expect this to happen
just like a guy in a
minute.
car.
As you can see now, some of the highway patrol, the motorcycles are here.
Matthew.
This was not here earlier. And then on the other side, we have the street closed as well. As everyone here at this point is just waiting. I'm trying to look and see if I could see the.
It is funny though that, like, I do appreciate. I would say this: if any kids watch this stream, I don't think any kids watch this stream. But if you're like a kid and you get in trouble for anything in school or at home, you should just be like Trump, because he just says, "I did everything right," and they arrest me. Like, just commit in that way.
Motorcade point. Drive up this block.
I don't like what he does, but I like how he does it.
Up this block, and Jake, what's going to happen is he's going to make a left here and head right into the courthouse.
This is the news. Someone is saying he's going to take a left here and then a right. He's going to put on his turn signal. It's gonna get in the left lane, but it's not a left turn arrow. It's just a green, so he has to wait. Like, what are we doing? Go ahead, Henry.
I think part of what rings hollow about this for me is so much of like these rituals, like saying it looks like the OJ chase and like trying to like newsify the story. Like they depend on a sense of like social shame that Trump's just oblivious to. Like there's so many people who want him to like suffer or be like punished in a way where like he has like this extended like moral self-realization that he's like done wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the man doesn't think like that. He's oblivious to it. Like
100%.
so like when you see these kind of like corporate like attempts to like reapply the same shame they've done to other figures in the media, it just looks like the joke's on them, because he's just like, it's like you're laughing at like an animal. It doesn't know the context you're trying to frame around it. Like
Yeah. I mean, everyone, the media and like a certain type of liberal person keeps trying to force Trump and Trumpism into the rules of their game, but he and they are playing a different game. So it just doesn't make sense. Helbrecht43 in the chat said, this isn't really news. It seems more like entertainment. Yeah. Ramrod in the chat said, hey, Michael, do you do psychedelics? If you do, which ones are your favorite? Tell me you didn't watch the 420 stream without telling me you didn't watch the 420 stream. That's what I'll say to that. But simple answer is yes, all of them. Not all of them, but yeah, we can talk about that more later. We've talked about this a lot on here before. But yeah, something about this feels just very
in our shot
very
here, there are
empty.
officers, Secret Service agents,
it's all spectacle,
and US
right? Nothing
Marshals.
really
that
happens.
Is where we believe he's going.
There's this line from Soren Kierkegaard in the book 2 Ages where he says something like, everything is advertising and publicity, but nothing ever happens. And that's what reality feels like.
Drive down and into that building where he will begin the process of being placed under arrest and then the arraignment. But at any point now, we should see him, Jake.
But guys, like, they're arresting him and he's going to go on trial in Florida. Like, come on.
Drive by. We can hear the sirens.
It's like Darth Vader being tried by a Sith
here
council
and
or
about
something.
To make this turn here, where law enforcement, as you can see behind me, Jake, has shut the street down, and we see some of the law enforcement here now, Jake.
Are people holding up signs that are like, yeah, they're like waving at him because people fucking love it. I like how there's a big Chick-fil-A and Starbucks sign. Something about that frame right there really gets me. The idea that we're like, it's this big political event. There's an ex-president getting arraigned, but really what we got is Chick-fil-A and Starbucks, you know, the continued corporate takeover of America's urban centers.
Here is the motorcade now, Jake.
And Shimon, describe the crowd as
everyone's just cheering for him.
As you can discern their mood and their actions from our...
Trumpsters are not racist. Something, oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I didn't know that Trumpsters was a thing. Trumpsters are not racist. Wow. Wow.
View thousands of miles away, it looks like a relatively peaceful crowd.
Yeah, it is a relatively, it's been peaceful, Jake. You're right, absolutely right. It's a peaceful
Trumpsters
crowd.
are peaceful. They're not racist.
Here you can see some Secret Service agents.
Guys, look at this guy. He's wearing a jail outfit. It says lock him up, and the cops are chasing him. Sick.
Yeah. Okay, the police are pushing away somebody who is dressed kind of like as a cartoon prisoner with a sign that says lock him up. But he got on the street, I think was the issue there. And the police came and pushed him aside, although it didn't look like a tremendously violent confrontation. Sorry, Shimon, go ahead.
Yeah, because what's happened...
Craig says CNN is like sports commentation for politics. Yeah, like CNN's falling apart too, because they just fired their CEO or whatever, Chris Licht, because he tried to make it just this like middle of the road entertainment channel, and everyone hated it.
People have been able to just stand there, right? We've been talking about the barricades. There not being any of those metal barricades to people to keep people from running into the street. Well, that's exactly what happened here.
Like, I'm gonna just fast forward and see if anything happens.
Defend him, not defend him.
The cards moved a little bit.
Of Trump's. You know,
I just
to Dana's point, yes, this is going to be pretty well.
I mean, here's the thing. I don't know. Like, I have the Legal Eagle video loaded, but I think we have too much to get to today, and we got Sam coming on pretty soon. But I don't know. I'm curious with people in the chat. If anyone even cares about this, I just like struggle to care. And again, we don't do politics here. We're not a political analysis channel. We're just here to talk about culture and our favorite movies. But I do think there's, I don't know. For me, I'm more interested by the cultural side of this, that like there is all this spectacle created around this one person who's done basically nothing ever in their whole life and will do nothing ever, who doesn't have any coherent or consistent ideology and doesn't really stand for anything. And yet our entire media infrastructure in this nation revolves around whatever happens to this one person. And then we wonder why everything sucks, you know? Scarlett said such a sad state of things. Someone, Azolio said the US knows how to put on a circus. Vox says, but politics and pop culture is totally my thing. We're here for you. We're here for you. Yeah, let's see. Dana said the funny thing about comparing this to the O.J. Simpson trial, car chases at the O.J. Simpson. Oh yeah, that was happening at the same time as the horrors in the Balkans. Yeah, I mean, there's always like real stuff happening. Aaron W says American politics are like sports. Someone says, Curtis says it's like watching NASCAR and hoping for a crash. Professor Puppet says they sound so disappointed that it's not getting violent. And I think that's true, right? Like when people turn on the news these days, that's all they want to see. I mean, like these news stations just want violence.
Yeah, I've heard
I don't know,
so
it's a
many
bummer.
kind of off the cuff, like, oh, I'm surprised another January 6th didn't happen. Like, so is that an expected norm now just because?
Yeah. And then, you know, it's one of those crazy things where like, I'll be honest, like there's times where I like sit, you know, there's that impulse sometimes. Maybe it's a little bit of that Freudian death drive or something where I'm watching something like that and I'm like, oh, sick. Hopefully something crazy happens. And I'm not honest, guys. I don't think that's good. I don't like that I think that, but sometimes it's like everything sucks anyways, so why not do that? But yeah, and everyone go watch the Legal Eagle video if you want to know more about it. Something I'm interested in talking about. So I want to switch to another ex-president. Today's President's Day. I know it's not the actual holiday, but today is President's Day. Why isn't this one loading when I click it? Oh, there it goes. I'm going to pause it when it starts. Cool. Okay, so some of you might know this. So there's different things you can do once you've been president. Some presidents, you know, they want to stay in politics. So someone like Trump has kept his head down, really played it low key, and has been gearing up for another run at the presidency. Some people get involved in humanitarian causes. You know, Jimmy Carter was really involved in Habitat for Humanity. Others, you know, become public speakers. Now, Barack Obama has gotten into media production, you know, the Hollywood lifestyle. And Obama has a production deal with Netflix, also a podcast production deal. And he's produced some documentaries. Obama's production company did produce American Factory, which I will say I thought was pretty good. Like I thought it was a good documentary. The most recent Netflix production from Obama's production company is called Working: What We Do All Day. And it's a documentary series about what it's like to work in America right now. So let's watch a little bit of the Professor Puppet. I was just kidding when I said keep his head down. Don't worry. What's up, Logan? Oh yeah, paint. Another thing ex-presidents do is paint. I'll say it. I liked George W. Bush's paintings. I think he had an interesting art style that was kind of pastel-based and playful. It was like, what does the world look like through an adult that has the aesthetic sensibilities of a child? I liked them. I thought they were good. So yeah, let's watch and if anyone's watched the Netflix show Working, let us know. Let's watch the preview.
We may not think about it, but we're all a part of something larger than any single one of us. And our work is one of the forces that connects us.
And that's Obama's voice.
It looks crazy downtown.
Good morning, it appears how to tell me assist you.
A revolution is happening right before our eyes.
What happens if they replace you with a machine?
Artificial intelligence, remote work, spiraling inequality. It can be hard.
Wow. I wonder who's responsible for some of this.
To make sense of where we're going. What if people...
Helbrecht says, I have a problem with documentaries. They don't have to be true. They don't have to be unbiased. Many people who watch them don't know that, and it's dangerous. No, Helbrecht, you're right. We talk about this in the video on authenticity we're working on. But I very much think that is a good point. And I think that being aware of the subjectivity of the documentarian is really important. And I think sometimes we can forget that. And we're going to talk about that now, so don't worry.
What if people from 3 different industries, from the service entrance to the C-suite, invited us into their lives and told us, what makes a good job good?
I just want to be at home.
I'm curious in the chat too. Does anyone have a job they really like? You know, a job they love a lot? I'm just curious. Someone says Obama watches Wisecrack. I don't think he does. That'd be cool if he did. Actually, I don't care.
My refrigerator's full. My bills is paid. There's peace.
This job is the money supply for my actual passion.
You'll never be able to make a living in the arts.
When I see a father bring his little son with him, it makes me feel like I missed a lot.
What does it take to feel satisfied?
I'd have the privilege of building something.
Natasha loves her job. That's amazing. I'm really happy for you. I like people love their jobs. Dirkster teaches college, but I don't have the way of it. Yeah, teaching college in some ways is the best job I've ever had. And the bad parts about it are the worst. Julia loves her job, but Julia, you do like city planning and stuff, which sounds really cool.
Something that would hopefully mean something in the world.
I grew up watching my dad define himself through his work. She always tells me, work isn't your only identity.
She seems more well-rounded than me. What if the life you dream of didn't seem so distant?
It would be nice if you got at least minimum wage.
I went bankrupt. The union affords people to be able to live.
When you have it all, what responsibility do you have to other people?
Someone pointed this out in the chat, but it was funny. In promoting this series, Obama crossed a picket line for the writers' strike, and his daughter's a member of the writers' union. So I just found it's funny.
Comes from people should go back to people multiple times over.
Whoa, Michael's an Air Force pilot and hates their job. Flying planes sounds fun, but it also sounds intense.
I got a jam coming. I can hear it.
They don't believe in working a 9 to 5 like we've done.
Money is not a motive.
But you need it.
I'm working 9 more years and I'm done.
What about your wife?
Oh, you'll be working there forever. Forget about it.
Isn't it weird that we just take working, like we just assume it's a thing that we just always have to do? Okay, so that's the thing there. Now there's a review of the show that's on Variety, written by Allison Herman. Allison Herman, who was a former guest of Culture Binge, which I know is a thing some of you listen to. And I think there's some really interesting stuff in this. So I'm gonna let's see. Oh yeah, sorry. It's in the doc, but I'll send you the link as well. 1 second. Guys, here we go. Oh, just in time for me to. I'm slow, guys. I'm slow on the uptake. Also, guys, Allison Herman, just a top-notch TV writer. Sharon Morrison said, "I love educating. I hate working in education." That's real. I mean, yeah, you all are sharing stuff about your job, so I'll be honest. I really like my job, but hey, what's up, Style and Talent? I just hate that in my current job, it just feels so fragile. Like working, sometimes I have this thought where I like my job now. I like doing this, right? But every digital thing dies. They all do. Like every platform, every media company, website, content production thing, they all die. And I like what I do, but if it all ended tomorrow, I just don't know what I would do next. It's not like this is like a transferable skill in a really literal way. So I think that's the thing that I most hate about my job and my industry and the way I think about stuff. It's just this constant feeling of instability. It'd be like being in a marriage if you knew that your partner was also always on dating apps and any day you could get home and their bags are packed. That's what it kind of feels like. Let's see. Logan Reese says, if only someone who was leader of the country could have done something about spiraling inequality. I know. It's crazy. And we're going to talk about this a little bit because Allison Herman has some thoughts on this in her review. Gordon likes her job okay, but had an interview for another job because I need more money and don't like working for state government. Major Evan, never thought they'd see us live, so used to just hearing your voice. Hey, Major Evan, good to see you. Chris says, does Obama drink the water some of the workers in Flint, Michigan drink too? I don't think so. Someone else pointed out that most industries eventually die. Purple's Art thinks my brand is transferable, so thanks. I appreciate that. Tech Meets Dan says, I hate how capitalism forces us to monetize everything we enjoy doing. It can never be just a hobby. Eric will take my job. So there you go. Ryan says, yeah, what happens if YouTube just started taking 55 instead of 45? Yeah, like, I mean, that's the thing, right? All of us are so dependent on platforms that it's very hard. Reed S says, as a marketing guy, you should start writing more. Yeah, all right, at some point when I have time. Penny's been working at their company for 20 years, so while I don't like every day, I apparently stay. Hey, listen, consistency is good. So I want to skip ahead to, there's a part of this review, Henry, down at the line, directed by Carolyn Suh. And the first part of the review, guys, is just Allison setting up, what the show is, and we get the basics of it from watching that. And thank you for liking the stream. Thank you for being here. So it says, directed by Caroline. So Working is divided into parts in 3 industries. Beginning with service work, every installment ascends a rung of the class ladder, progressing upwards through middle managers, knowledge workers, and finally the executives. I can't wait to see how the executives live. Working illustrates these hierarchies, not just throughout the economy, but within specific workplaces. A home health aid agency in southern Mississippi, a luxury hotel in New York City, and a tech startup working to automate long-distance trucking with outposts in Pittsburgh and Silicon Valley. At the hotel, we start with a housekeeper, and then we end with the chairman of the Indian conglomerate that owns the hospitality group. I think that's interesting, the way they explore all the levels of this. All of these businesses represent some aspect of the modern workforce, from the care and service sectors that have replaced manufacturing to technology companies that disrupt the status quo. There are also stark differences among the case studies. The hotel is unionized, protecting jobs some peers have eliminated and ensuring a high standard of pay. The home healthcare agency, on the other hand, pays just $10 an hour with few benefits and no hazard pay during the pandemic. Ugh. Even within the same tech company, an offsite engineering contractor can have wildly opposite experiences. Let's see, and it's Obama's job to put these disparities in context and advance a narrative about what work is and should be. This is where I start feeling a little, He does this principally via voiceover, which alternate between generic outtakes from a standard Democratic stump speech and pocket histories accompanied by animation and stock footage. I'm going to go, let's skip to this exchange. So they basically talk about Obama talking with one of the workers. And Allison goes on to write, this exchange comes close to articulating the ethos behind both working and higher ground being the Obama's production company. That when no longer in the White House, the best way for the Obamas to affect change for that next generation is through culture and the soft power that comes with it. You guys know my take on this. I really don't think that media has that much cultural or political efficacy because it doesn't have any material efficacy. Most of Higher Ground's output has aligned with some kind of liberal cause, whether the conservation of natural resources, childhood nutrition, or civic engagement. Working is no different, advancing an uncontroversial yet increasingly unattainable ideal for how jobs can provide both sustenance and meaning. A good job is one where you feel seen and valued and might have the chance to grow, Obama intones. When we make sure that everyone feels their work is respected, we reinforce the trust between us that makes everything in our lives possible. Going on. But of course, Obama, and I think this is the juice right here, guys. Thanks for being here. Like the stream. The chat is still fucked for me, but I'm glad you are here. I'm going to see if I can get the chat to reload in a way where I can see you all. But it's not working well for me. Oh, well. But of course, Obama is not some outside force working to influence the system. He's a politician who occupied a position of enormous power for almost a decade. This fact looms over working, which can couch deeply ideological arguments as neutral observations. Let's be blunt, Obama says. There's always someone at the top of the ladder and someone at the bottom. That's especially true with capitalism, and we shouldn't pretend otherwise. One of those things where it's like, yes, right? Like, yes, but also sometimes comments like that do this weird thing where they try to like naturalize that sort of level of economic relation. And by that, I mean, people will say like, well, there's always someone at the top and someone at the bottom. That's just how capitalism is, acting as if capitalism is in a specific economic theory and system developed by specific human beings at a certain point in history and perpetuated by others, right? It's not like if I say, we all know that trees grow upwards and their branches stick out with leaves that feed off chlorophyll. I don't know if that's true. I don't know anything about nature, but I'm describing a natural process, or the sun always rises and the sun always sets. Sure, those are natural objective processes. But when we describe economics in that way, it's very weird. And economists love to do this. Economists love to just be like, well, I'm just describing the laws of physics. You're not. Goes on to say, as leftist critiques have gained traction within Obama's own party, this reads less like an obvious truth and more like a subjective worldview from someone who's always been more centrist than socialist. That sensibility is partly reflected in Working, which loses some bite as it shifts focus from those struggling to get by to the CEOs running the show. Obama does lament corporate greed, but naturally the leaders who afforded Working access aren't identified as the bad ones. Yeah, of course they're not. Guys, and I'm just like, I'm sure the chat rips right now. I'm going to just full on close YouTube and open it back up. I'm sure if I would just be so proud of you all and just happy if I could look at the chat right now. I'm going to load it again and we'll see what happens. Okay, we're starting again. I'm very sorry to have to do this, everyone, because I just want to see you all. I want to see your great comments. Ryan says there is an objective aspect of economics. Ryan, I'm sure there's an objective aspect. I guess I mean like ideologically, like the way systems are formed. It's not, I don't think we could say any method of economic relations are natural or like inherent to human beings, that in a vacuum we would act a certain way. Michael says Obama's my favorite president of my lifetime, but that bar is so friggin' low. Yeah, for sure. Let's keep going. Obama's actual track record in office and its effects on the conditions outlined in Working are mostly implied around the margins. In Mississippi, the tenuous nature of home care work is partly pinned on the Republican governor's refusal to expand Medicaid, one of the bulwarks of the Affordable Care Act, Obama's signature piece of legislation. At other points, there's more daylight between the actions of Obama, the president, and Obama, the executive producer. Also, this is like, the Clintons have a production company too. And my most cynical take is, if you go into public service just to start a production company to suck money off of the current boom in like streaming and digital content, then like, God, the chat is just screwing again. Helbrecht says work is progress. Capitalism stalls progress. Those on the bottom, those on top, they want to stay on top, and that stability reduces progress and happiness. Gordon says chat is always ripping. You're not wrong. So let's see. So yeah, Working is vocally critical of tech companies' role in propagating the gig economy, following one Uber Eats driver who makes less than minimum wage. But his one-time administration was so cozy with big tech that many of Obama's former colleagues have worked with the same corporations driving the ships Working decries. David Plouffe at Uber, Jay Carney at Amazon, Valerie Jarrett on Lyft. And this is like a thing, right? Like a lot of and I'm going to forget the exact legislation, but in a lot of states, there's been this thing passed recently that gives, what's the word I'm looking for? That gives some of these like gig economy companies the ability to kind of do whatever they want and not have normal labor legislation. And we might think like, who are the evil ghouls making this happen? It's all fucking people from the Obama administration that are a part of this. Now, or can we blame Obama for what people that worked with him during his administration do after the fact? Well, not in a literal sense, but it's telling. It is telling that the person making the show during their administration worked with a bunch of people who are clearly on the side of platforms and corporations over and against the lives of working people. Again, I'm seeing some good stuff in the chat, but it comes up. So Vox says that argue there's an objective aspect to most social sciences. That doesn't mean all current systems in that social science are inevitable science too. Yeah, and I think, again, I like to get a little, how you say, hyperbolic here sometimes. I guess rather than objective, the term I should use, and what my point before about economics is that economics sometimes gets spoken of as if it is a natural science and not a social science. That's what I mean. Like it's a hard science and not a social science. And with Vox's point there, following Vox's point, social sciences are fields of study that have objective methodologies, but are often talking about social and cultural and human systems that are way more subjective. And I think economics is like that. The same way that when a sociologist observes a type of behavior, or when an anthropologist is analyzing a cultural practice, it's not to say like, oh, this cultural practice just is. The goal of the anthropologist is to explore the meaning and purpose behind that cultural practice. I think, because I majored in anthropology, but it's been a long time. Show goes on to say, Working itself airs on Netflix, Higher Ground's partner since 2018, and a company currently being called out by the Striking Writers Guild of America for catalyzing upheavals in Hollywood that have undermined steady employment. Higher Ground has also inked deals with Spotify and Amazon's Audible, right? So, and again, production companies got to produce, but still, the show cannot and should not be judged by Obama alone, but his presence is a double-edged sword, helping working to acquire an audience while subjecting it to tougher questions than if it were merely an empathetic, well-crafted portrayal of modern employment. In the Trump years, the enthusiasm of Obama's election could curdle into the suspicion that his accomplishments were more aesthetic than structural. That is a bar right there, too. Shouts to Allison for that line. I'll say that again. The enthusiasm of Obama's election could curdle into the suspicion that his accomplishments were more aesthetic than structural. And I think a lot of things I've said on the stream we've talked about before boil down to that a lot of what we think of as politics aren't really doing structural work. They're doing aesthetic and cultural work. Offering semi-annual playlist in lieu of lasting solutions to major problems. Guys, that's so good. This is a very good writer. This is what happens when you have someone who's writing about TV shows who's also an astute cultural critic. Much of Higher Ground's work feels like a tacit admission that this is precisely the case, with Working only the latest example. I don't know, that one went pretty hard. That one went pretty hard. I'm curious what people think about that. I'm going to try to again get the chat reloaded, so maybe we can eventually actually engage with each other. So maybe if anyone has thoughts on that, please share them. I'm going to try to look up the chat one more time and get it to work. In a second, we'll have Sam coming on. I think he's in the waiting room right now. Before we get him pulled up, do you want to do an order of operation stuff? Do you want to do a thumbnail change first? Yes. And I'll just hang out with you guys, just the two of us. By the two of us, I mean me and all 470 of you. And please like the stream if you haven't already. It means a lot. Let's see. And again, I think the point, along with everything else being said right now, of the Obama thing isn't to criticize Obama as such, but simply to say that a lot of what we think of, it's the same thing with and here's the similarity between the Trump thing and the Obama thing. They both exhibit how politics is mostly about aesthetics, media, and culture. What is the point of Trump? We get to watch him get arrested, and there's cars and there's media and all this sort of stuff. What is the point of Obama's post-presidency political influence? He makes content. What does the content do? It has aesthetics that vaguely align with some of our liberal leanings without having any real bite to them. What does all this allow us to do? Consume political culture the same way we consume reality dating shows without really pushing anything at a material level and allowing all of the people making this political content to make an ass ton of money while doing it. Because let's not forget, in the process of making a Netflix show, Obama makes an ass ton of money. Trump continues to make an ass ton of money. And these news networks that create this shit make an ass ton of money while we kind of hang out and stare at the screens saying, oh, there's the good one. There's the bad one. There's the thing I agree with. There's the thing I don't agree with. So there you go. Prairie fire, that's not a fact, but I really appreciate it. Let's see. Any thoughts on the federal? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, let's pull Sam in.
All right. In just a moment, I'll be pulling Sam in. Everybody prepare.
Hey, there's a person. Can you hear us?
I can hear you guys. Can you hear
Awesome.
me?
What's behind you? Is that a person?
That's Spider-Man.
Oh my God. That's amazing. Let's
Yeah,
talk about that.
So one of my moms, I have two moms. I was conceived via sperm donor. Sometimes that just comes up right away in conversations, as in
I
right
like
now.
how that's the first
Yeah.
thing we get into.
So one of my moms used to work at Sony until she cussed out her boss in a justified manner, in my opinion, because her boss basically was just treating her like shit because she was like the direct assistant. She didn't go to college or anything. She worked her way up as a temp originally and then just became like this big movie producer's like main assistant. And so she worked on a ton of movies, and one of them or two of them were Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2, the Tobey Maguire ones. So this is
both very solid
actually
pictures.
a life-size Tobey Maguire. I'll stand next to it so you can see.
Love this.
This is a small man, but he's solid.
Amazing. Well, listen, nothing's ever been more appropriate than getting to talk to you about some of the stuff we talk about on our channel, where the two things we care about are political and cultural analysis and superhero movies. So Sam, it's nice to talk to you and nice to just to meet you in a public setting like this. Let's do some background. So I've really loved reading some of your articles, and especially on Twitter, you're just really, really hot, really going for it. And I really love it.
Well,
so your background right now, you're doing a PhD in philosophy at what is it? City College of New York?
Yeah, the City University of New York. So the CUNY system, right? The CUNY system's big graduate school is called the Graduate Center, the CUNY Graduate Center.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. How far are you into your PhD journey?
So I started in 2019 and moved to New York City the same year I graduated from UC Santa Barbara, where I did my undergrad.
Nice.
Graduated 2019, moved to New York, and then spring of 2020, COVID pandemic hits New York City. I moved back. Well, actually, more like winter 2020. It was like February. I moved back here to Pasadena, California, where I'm at now at my mom's house, and then finished that year online, my first year taking classes, then did my second year also all online taking classes and also teaching a class to students at Brooklyn College, but also all remote. So my first teaching experience was literally teaching a bunch of like Zoom boxes on the screen. There was like a policy where you couldn't require your students to have their cameras on because a lot of students are like at home in like crowded apartments. There's like little kids running around, like all that sort of thing. So I mean, that was I think a good policy, but it did make it difficult to teach because I'm just talking to a bunch of I can't really detect if the students are absorbing the material. People aren't volunteering to ask a lot of questions, and of course also just that time it must have just been tough for the students too. I mean, I was talking to them a lot, and like they were struggling with all their other classes. A lot of the professors were sort of like, well, just business as usual and not having a lot of empathy. And I feel like as a grad student, I sort of got more because I was struggling to do my work at the same time. So then I finished that second year and then started a leave of absence and am now finishing my leave of absence. So I did 2 years and then I took 2 years off. And during these 2 years off, I've been working for the African American Policy Forum.
Amazing.
Basically, I was contacted by Kimberly Crenshaw, who runs the African American Policy Forum, because she saw some Twitter threads I was doing about Rufo and critical race theory and all that stuff. And because I had sort of independently learned about critical race theory through my classes with Charles Mills, who rest in peace, he died tragically in September 2021. Basically right around the time I started that leave of absence. And because of what I had learned in his classes in philosophy of race, Marxism, I had developed a bit of knowledge about critical race theory, and then it becomes this like big political issue in American politics, starting in like the fall of 2020, right before the election. Donald Trump put out an executive order banning critical race theory. And so I was already following James Lindsay, and then Chris Rufo started to be this figure. And then I sort of watched as like these two weird guys who I just sort of was like interested in because of the way that they were laundering sort of right-wing misappropriations of philosophy. I just sort of wanted to put out a sort of counter to that I didn't see coming from like sort of mainstream or just like academic sources. So I just wanted to do that on Twitter, and that's what I've been doing.
That's incredibly cool, man. Also in the chat, many people very impressed that the Kimberly Crenshaw reached out to you, and then someone who's a Brooklyn college student says, "Come back so I can take one of your classes." And also, see, I didn't realize that we're about 10 miles away from each other right now. I figured you'd be in New York. So
oh yeah,
I'm in Los Feliz, Los Angeles. You're in Pasadena.
Oh, dude.
Not far. So that's amazing. Also, I was looking out your window. I was like, that looks like a nice verdant situation. But then the green drink, that's a very Los Angeles thing to have. So that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear you talk about both your experience of teaching during COVID and your experience of being engaged in philosophy and all this is happening. Because I was in academia full time, left in like 2017, and truly feel so old. And then I feel like I was teaching in a completely different climate. Like some of the stuff I hear about now with what's happening on campuses, the influence of politicians and board members on, what people can teach, how they can teach it. And just, of course, a world where very weird and sadly very popular right-wing figures are like doing podcasts about Hegel and stuff. It's just like a different world to the way things used to be. And there's some questions that, guys, I see some of these. I'm gonna wait and ask him some of these, but they're good. But so I guess
2017. I was just gonna say 2017. Like I feel like when I like look back and think about like when did like the sort of the trend that I follow now, like when did it start to really kick up? And it's kind of right around that 2017. I mean, 2017, Jordan Peterson, I think, first started to blow up.
Yeah.
Because of what he said about Bill C-17 and how, it didn't matter so much whether he was accurately reporting what the bill was going to do. It really mattered that he was like tapping into this kind of like anger of like young white men mostly, and they're sort of like, what is all this? Like, this feminism, multiculturalism stuff. And when you look back at that, like those things, there were panics about those in the 90s and before. But the one that really picked up, I mean, I like to also look at it through the lens of the 2018 James Lindsay grievance studies thing. Then that sort of like really kicked things up. That's where Lindsay got his start anyways. But yeah, I mean, so much has happened.
Yeah. And I was also in a weird place where my last 2 years as a full-time academic, I was in the UK. So like the whole Trump election and everything around that era, I was teaching at a university in the UK. So got to have kind of externalized view. But in my classes, obviously, there wasn't like British kids with MAGA hats on. If anything, they were just like, this is really fucking weird. And, but one of the last classes I ever taught full time was I developed, it was like a full year course on Marxism. And now there's even part of me that's like, what if I was doing that now at like certain schools in America?
And like, so many.
Yeah, which is wild. So let's maybe start with this, like, and a lot more about the history around this stuff than I do. So I'm curious, and for everyone who doesn't follow Sam on Twitter, you did a really great thread last week on the history of cultural Marxism. I think 25 or more tweets in order with receipts, clips, and links to all this sort of stuff. But, let's maybe start with so many places to start. Let's start with someone like a James Lindsay and sort of this idea. And for people who don't know James Lindsay, he was like a math professor in Tennessee.
Not quite a professor. He was a PhD student. And I think he rightly recognized that he didn't have a lot of academic prospects
Yes.
with a PhD in math from the University of Tennessee. He finished his PhD. He became a massage therapist, and then
Did not know this, and I love it.
yeah, that was an
See,
interesting
already
thing.
this is great.
He had some interesting blog posts about his stepdaughters sort of not respecting him. That was a weird thing. I learned about this much later. I wasn't following at the time, but he would call them specific names I shouldn't, because I don't remember what the specific nicknames were. But he did that, and then he was involved in the new atheist movement. And I'm not sure whether that is exactly like the right label for it, but when I talk about the new atheist movement, I'm talking about basically like post 9/11, specifically because a lot of this was used to sort of promote Islamophobia.
Kind of like that
policy
Hitchens,
level.
like
Hitchens, Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Bill Maher made that documentary called Religulous, which when I was 13, I thought was cool. And I'm sure if I look back now, I'd be like, oh my God, this is cringe. But a lot of those characters sort of have followed similar trajectories of like starting out as being like confidently atheist and sort of seeing like religious belief or belief in a god or gods, I think, as sort of like simply like childish or delusional. Dawkins used the term delusion, and they thought that like by pointing out, by like writing books about how God is obviously not real, and like by sort of debunking on a serious like philosophical critical thinking level, that would sort of change the tide and sort of ameliorate the harms of religious fundamentalism. And I don't want to say that there are no harms associated with religious fundamentalism. Obviously there are. I know that raised in a home by two moms, and religious fundamentalists would say that they shouldn't be married, and that maybe I shouldn't even exist. But anyways, James Lindsay was one of these people. He was one of these people who was in the new atheist movement, and then the new atheism movement was sort of split by this faction of people who thought that social justice was an important part of the atheist movement, that these like people needed to be informed by like compassion and empathy and concerns for racial justice and feminism and same-sex marriage, support for that, all sorts of things. And people who thought that this was like, that they were corrupting the purity of it. And that led to a split. And that also informed kind of Gamergate. A lot of the people on the other side of that in the atheist movement were Gamergate. There's all sorts of like backstory, but eventually James Lindsay gets a lot of money from an undisclosed donor, funding what he calls the Grievance Studies hoax or Grievance Studies affair, where he spent a year writing as many fake papers as possible, or they're real papers, but he called them like fake papers because he thought they were so transparently absurd and arguing for conclusions that should never be accepted in any academic journal. And he tried to get as many published as possible with the help of Peter Boghossian, who is a philosophy professor, or was a philosophy professor at Portland State, and Helen Pluckrose, who I believe was in a PhD program in literature and got her MA and left the program. They did this, and when it launched, when the story broke, it was in the Wall Street Journal, it was on the front page of the New York Times, it got huge media coverage.
For folks that don't know, right, this is also a repetition of like the famous Sokal hoax, where back in the day when postmodernism was popping in academia, some science dudes like used like bullshitty postmodern language, got it published, and used that as a way to be like, see, like Derrida and Foucault are dumb because I got this thing published.
Right.
So sorry,
Even
just
though
in that context.
Alan Sokal, physics professor, they called it, they were consciously sort of trying to take it to the next level. So they called it Sokal squared. Alan Sokol actually emailed me to sort of like because
you get hit
I
up by
published
some wild people.
I published a critique of Cynical Theories, the book that sort of was launched by the grievance studies hoax.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people's response to the hoax was, well, like, this doesn't prove what you think it does, of course, because it's not a scientific, even though these people claim to be the champions of rationalism and scientific inquiry, and they want to restore, the scientific quality to these academic journals. There was no control group. They had no real way of understanding, like, of sort of like comparing these papers across disciplines. There was none of that. They just sort of were like, let's just get as many papers as we can published. They would send them to multiple journals at once, which is, you're not supposed to do that at all. And like, people were like, this doesn't prove what you think it does. You should just like write your own thing and like argue your own point,
Yeah.
And so they did in Cynical Theories. And I wrote a critique of it. It got published in Liberal Currents. And Alan Sokol emailed me and was sort of like, I know they're not responding to your critique, but but it seems to me that you're actually making some good points. And I was like, well, I mean, I'm glad you say that. I don't know if I ever responded. I was writing response. I don't know if I ever sent it, but yeah, that was interesting. But
yeah,
sorry.
and Cynical Theories, you mentioned this. But yeah, guys, for anyone who doesn't know, there's like Cynical Theories written by Lindsay and Co. I mean, I'll say this kind of rudely because I'm not still as engaged in serious academic work as you, so I don't have to be careful. It's just like a really fucking stupid book, and written by people with very limited understanding and training in the theories in which they're trying to critique. But for whatever reason, yeah, there was this moment, and I feel like it kind of, at least some of the ways I was seeing it, very much coincided with like the early era of the pandemic, overlapped with, the murder of George Floyd and a lot of uprisings around the country. And around that time, it seemed like there was this, parallel thing where I saw more and more people doing, and it felt like there was a time where a lot of people who were previously at least like vaguely liberal or even progressive folks, many of whom, of course, were whites, started quoting that book and being like, well, actually, maybe there's some problems with this. And it kind of crept in a very like, well, I don't know, you got to consider this sort of way. And then quickly just got so much more insidious. And I even remember the first time I read something by Lindsay, I didn't quite get how shitty and evil that trajectory was. And of course, at that point, I didn't know who Chris Rufo was, who seemed, and I don't want to jump ahead too much here, but it seems like the politicization of this really picks up when Chris Rufo gets involved. And just real quick as well, for anyone tuning in, just a reminder, we do this sometimes since it's live. Wait, I didn't ask you this, Sam. I want to make sure I say your last name. Is it Hoadley-Brill?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, cool. But we're Sam Hoadley-Brill. Sam is a writer, an academic, PhD student, and someone who's done a lot of really cool work looking at people that are obsessed with things like CRT and cultural Marxism and wokeness and all this sort of stuff. So we're excited to talk to him about that. That's what we're into now. But yeah, so maybe if you want to like, we'll keep pushing the narrative forward, but maybe let's get to how you see someone like a Chris Rufo kind of pouring gasoline on this fire that's already started.
Rufo is an interesting story as well. He, just like James Lindsay, so Lindsay and Pluckrose and Boghossian, they all, when they published the Grievance Studies Affair, they were then like interviewed by Andy No in I think Quillette, and they were like, we're all leftists. They were like, we're all on the left. We're liberals. We just think that we need to critique our own side. We need to focus on the problems with what's wrong here. Of course, James Lindsay no longer claims to. He does claim to be a liberal because I think one of the things he actually gets right about liberalism is that you can be a conservative liberal. Like
for sure.
Like so liberal often in the US is used to just mean left of center, but I think that's wrong. I think it's more about sort of a doctrine of like individual rights and freedom and equal treatment under the law, etc. But they claim to all be liberals. Rufo started out as a liberal, according to the way he tells his story. He went to Georgetown, and while he was there, he was on the left protesting against the war in Iraq. And he eventually got sort of disillusioned with leftism. He also says that his like all his grandparents, I think his parents were immigrants from Italy, and I think he says that all his like grandparents and his family in the old country are all like Gramscian communists. I think that I don't know if that's really true, but that would be pretty funny if like literally every one of his other relatives was like a Gramscian leftist.
Yeah.
And Rufo
And for folks who are watching who don't know this, yeah, Gramsci, Italian leftist philosopher, wrote a bunch of dope stuff in prison. Really interesting guy.
Yeah.
I think many of you watching this stream would like him. But yeah, so that's what that's referring to.
Yes. And it's interesting because Rufo does represent this kind of right-wing Gramscianism, so Gramsci's contribution was sort of saying that like culture, sort of that a lot of Orthodox Marxists neglected the material nature of so many cultural institutions. Like the fact that you are sort of brought up in this culture will have a material impact on like your understanding of the world, on your ability to push back against, oppressive conditions, etc. And so that leftists need to kind of incorporate culture into their understanding of how hegemony works, right? That was another contribution of his, the idea of hegemony, like something so dominant that it just doesn't even get questioned. And so Rufo was working at the Manhattan. No, first he was working at, he bounced all over the place, but he was a documentary maker who then became a sort of right-wing think tank guy. And he's worked at the Heritage Foundation, the Claremont Institute, the Discovery Institute, which is where he was at when he started the critical race theory thing. The Discovery Institute is known for pushing for creationism to be recognized as like a legitimate alternative to Darwinian theory of evolution and taught in schools as a sort of alternative. So that's a fun one. Rufo illustrates how the whole pushback against so-called critical race theory really comes as a pushback to the Black Lives Matter protests following the murder of George Floyd.
Yeah.
Because what he said, and this was a really interesting thing to watch in real time, was like after George Floyd's murder, there were so many protests. It was the largest racial justice protest movement in U.S. history by far, and I think just the largest protest movement in U.S. history. And it was the first time.
It's almost like we've already forgotten the scope of that, right? Like it's weird to even think back to like 3 years ago, a period where at least, I don't know if you were out west at that point, but it was like aspects of the city of Los Angeles were like shut down on a daily basis. And like there was 7 different things happening all at once. There was this discussion where corporations and celebrities were getting involved. That really felt like this incredible, like 6 to 8 week period where everything was changing. And then, then it didn't. But yeah, sorry.
Yes, like the NBA was about to get shut down, right? The Milwaukee Bucks, right after the shooting of, was it Jacob Blake was his name, I think? And the Milwaukee Bucks were about to be like, no, we're just not going to play. And then Barack Obama, who you were talking about earlier, Barack Obama came in, was like, guys, come on, we want to watch the playoffs. Crazy moment in U.S. political history. But it was true that it was very weird. These corporations were like stepping forward as like, we are going to do better. Like, we're all going to introduce all these, diversity trainings, and like, we're going to publish a reading list for our employees, and like people are going to read Robin DiAngelo. And that was, I think, a big a missed opportunity for like real, I think, much better scholarship on like race and racial injustice to be promoted. But instead what we got was Robin DiAngelo and Ibram Kendi, when I think, Tommy Shelby and Charles Mills would have been a much better intellectual duo to like sort of lead that movement. But Rufo was right, because basically Rufo was right that a lot of corporations were now sort of just trying to push stuff on their employees. That was true. But Rufo took that as an opportunity to say, what is this that they're pushing? It's this divisive Marxist ideology that hates America and is actually seeking to undermine America as we know it. And it's called critical race theory. And he went on Tucker Carlson and called out to Trump specifically, to the president of the United States, it's within your power to immediately issue an executive order abolishing critical race theory in the federal government. Trump was watching. Trump's people called Rufo the next morning. Rufo got on board a flight a couple days later to DC, and he helped draft the executive order. That didn't kick off the critical race theory moral panic immediately. That actually, the CRT moral panic really started to pick up when Joe Biden won, and immediately on his first day undid the executive order, and Rufo announced he's going to have a statewide campaign to introduce the legislation banning critical race theory, not just from the bureaucracy, but from public schools in every state that he can do it. And one of the first states to do it was New Hampshire introduced one. And Rufo and Lindsay appeared in the testimony as like experts recommended to testify in favor.
To interrupt you for 1 second and be the dumb guy here, or the crass one, to be clear as well, right? Much of this as well, like the Rufo and Lindsay stuff on critical race theory, is like dudes saying shit to take advantage of a moment and skew political leadership in their favor without any real stake in the game or understanding of what they were talking about. Because it really felt like early on, when these people said the term critical race theory, it really felt like it was made up. Because the second you even like Wikipedia'd critical race theory, it was like, but this is a different thing than what they're doing. So it really felt like at that moment, just like if you say a thing loud enough, it becomes true.
And I think Rufo probably did this largely strategically. I mean, Rufo is one of those people who doesn't care at all to pretend like he's doing something in a legitimate manner. Like he will take to Twitter and tweet out his plan about like, this is how we're going to deceive people for a political PR campaign, and it's going to work. And here's why it's going to work. And then he would do it, and it would work. So I think that he probably had a lot of calculated thought into this. And critical race theory is a really good, like from a right-wing perspective, it's a very strategically soundbite because it sounds scary, right? Your critical race theory, right? It sounds academic and sort of elitist, right? It sounds like something going on in those Ivy League institutions, which largely it was originally. Like that is how it started out. But it sounds like you're criticizing. Why are you criticizing? And critical race theory, well, we know it's on the left. Who does the left hate? Well, they're Black Lives Matter. They hate white people, right? It sounds scary to these people who it is appealing to. And because of the fact that it is this obscure thing, the first liberal response to the critical race theory accusations, and I was part of this too because I didn't think far enough ahead, but the first liberal response was to say the thing that they're teaching in schools is not critical race theory. But I think that is a huge mistake to respond to it that way, because when you say it's not critical race theory, what that sounds like you're saying is, well, we agree that critical race theory should not be taught in schools. We just are saying it's not being taught in schools, and you're saying it is. And then as soon as they find one example that counts, then they're like, look, they're saying it's not being taught in schools. So I think Rufo probably had a lot of serious thought about why this buzzword would work. And he described in multiple interviews, it was used first as new language to push back against Black Lives Matter.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, and one of like the next steps, or one of the parallel next steps made by Rufo and some of these folks, like, so I, heard from, I'm not going to say names here, but an old colleague recently, I realized, has been a philosophy professor at the New College of Florida. and kind of had to make a very subtle statement about why he might be leaving for various reasons, yada yada. And like, this is a school where, and if I understand this correctly, was it that Ron DeSantis put Rufo on the board of a college? And I like went to high school in Florida, and when I grew up, the New College of Florida was basically, if you wanted to go to a public school but you were like an artsy lefty weirdo, that's where you went. It's a school that had brilliant programs in philosophy and anthropology and the arts, and it's where, if you were like a young, like queer student, maybe that's where you're going to go because you're going to have some community there. And it just felt so on point and so fucked up that this is where they start doing this. And now, students have had to leave and stuff like that. But the way in which they so quickly went from, using scary cultural boogeyman terms to freak people out to like a direct attack on academic institutions and academic departments. And now how, especially when we zoom in on Florida a little more specifically, like and again, like I, for a year of my life, adjuncted at a couple of schools in Florida. And now just to imagine, like, for those who don't know this, like they put the Ron DeSantis has like a Stop Woke Act bill. There is stuff they put into bills at the state level about literally not teaching critical race theory, critical theory, Marxism, all this sort of stuff at colleges. Professors are leaving, getting censored, saying they can't teach courses they used to teach anymore. So I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, but that's the one thing I think, one of the other things that's really been terrifying about this movement is that there's been like the attack from the media perspective. So you get talking heads on the news and you can people out that way. There's the sort of school board thing. They've mobilized incredibly over there. And then also at higher education and the university level, both infiltrating, boards, students, pedagogy, all this sort of stuff. It's such an insane, it's almost impressive in the coordination.
Yeah, no, I think it is
what
impressive.
they've done in a couple of years. And when we say impressive, structural level, we're not like, oh, this is cool.
Right, it's terrible.
But it's not like anything I've seen in my lifetime. So yeah.
Yeah, it's not like anything I can remember seeing at all. The interesting thing though is if you go back and you look for the precedents of these kinds of things, you can actually find them. I recently watched an interesting documentary about, I think it was 2010 in Texas. Every maybe 10 years or so, like there's a sort of local politicians who are elected to rewrite, I think, state level U.S. history standards and that sort of thing. And the thing that was going on in 2010 or so in Texas is very similar to this. If you look at the Republican Party's, like the Texas Republican Party's platform in either 2010 or 2012, it was laughed off at the time in the national media as like totally crazy that people were pushing this, when like clearly the country's like going in a more progressive direction. We have our first Black president. He's going to be a 2-term president. Support for gay marriage is sort of on the rise. And people were like, this is insane. Like Texas must be some backward state. And now look what's going on. Now it's like you have a national movement of red states leading the charge against what the way they frame it. It's about basically protecting white children from being told that they're evil oppressors, and also protecting children of color from being told that they're perpetual victims and nothing will ever happen good for them. But yeah, and then also Florida, I think, is probably the state where higher education has been impacted in the most severe way, especially with the New College of Florida as a kind of sign of what is next for higher education.
Yeah, a little
in
test
Florida.
case.
Yeah, exactly. What they said is that they want to create the Hillsdale of the South. So for people who don't know, Hillsdale College is this conservative college, sort of claims to be based on like classical education, and it's in Michigan, but they are always at the forefront of sort of trying to take higher education in a new right-wing direction. They were like some of the leading scholars, I guess you could call them scholars there at Hillsdale College, but who like took the charge for Trump's 1776 report, which is his sort of answer to the 1619 project, which regurgitates all these talking points. So yeah, I mean, that's scary that is what's going on. And when this all started, I thought that it was going to mostly remain kind of targeted at like K through 12 schools, largely because I know that a right-wing goal is to undermine public faith in K through 12 schools so that they can justify charter schools and privatizing the K through 12 education system. But it is surprising how much it has impacted higher ed as well, for sure.
Yeah. So I have at least two more things on it. Are you cool to hang for a few more?
Yeah, I got time.
Just want to respect your time, man. It's although it's it's a gray day in Southern California. Who wants to go?
Mm-hmm.
But so what would you say, and maybe in like the simplest ways possible, if that's even possible, in your research, reading, paying attention, engaging with psychos on Twitter, all the stuff you've done to understand whatever we'll call this movement, whether it's the anti-CRT thing, the stop woke thing, the attack on cultural Marxism. Do you see like a clear end game or end goal in what is happening here?
I wouldn't say
Sorry,
there's
that's
like
too big of a question, but yeah.
No, I mean, it's a good question. I don't think there's one clear end game. I think that with a lot of things in right-wing politics, and left politics too, I mean, just there's always this issue of sort of competition within a sort of political movement. There's sort of dissidents within the group who want their own things that's maybe different from what the establishment wants. And I think with something like DeSantis, you see that for sure. I mean, DeSantis, there's this really good story that ProPublica reported about DeSantis's efforts to undermine Black voter power in Florida, where the redistricted map of Florida that DeSantis proposed was too extreme even for the Republicans in the state legislature of Florida. They were like, this is just like too obviously gerrymandering. But DeSantis pushed it through because he sort of bullied his way through, kind of modeling himself after Trump, which he did also in his bid to get elected. And so I think it's also interesting because now you have a movement that, basically started under Trump in terms of Trump can take credit as starting the pushback against critical race theory because it happened first with his executive order. DeSantis now can take credit as the guy who's done the most to fight critical race theory, as he does. He's like, Florida is where woke goes to die, which is just a hilarious catchphrase. But I don't think that either of them have the same end goal necessarily, because I think if Trump were to get elected again, the way that he would push back against critical race theory is very specific to, well, what does Trump want? And at the end of the day, I think Trump is loyal to nobody but himself. And he just sort of wants the credit for everything. He wants to be the best. He wants to be the guy who owned the libs the hardest, the most. DeSantis, I think, has probably more specific ambitions in terms of he wants to use state power to put conservatives in charge. He wants to and then, I mean, that's DeSantis. Then there's Vivek Ramaswamy, who wants to abolish the Department of Education. Trump also said he would do that. But like all of these emerging figures in the right-wing primary, they're all going to talk about critical race theory. They're all going to push back against wokeness, and they're all going to mean different things by it. So I don't think it's clear at all what sort of end game there is. But I do think that one thing that a lot of the right-wing think tanks have latched onto this, because they've always wanted to privatize K through 12 education. They've always wanted vouchers. They've literally wanted that since Brown v. Board of Education required schools to desegregate. And that's when these private segregation academies first started to pop up, especially in the South. and they want taxpayers to subsidize those things. They want people to pay so their kid can go to the Christian school.
Yeah.
So I think that's
Well, and
probably
this is
the
where it seems
biggest thing
like,
that they all have in common.
yeah. And that does seem to be the point as well, where there's the most like consistent historical precedent. The idea that public education is a space of ideological formation and a space where people can potentially learn to be democratic or participate in a democratic society. And the more control one has over that, the more control one has over ideological formation and what people see as like the limits of political possibility. You know, I've thought about this recently in like some of the Florida legislation where regardless of your political viewpoints, we already live in a country where the range of political possibility is so much smaller than in most other nations, whether it be in, you know, Europe or South America. And they're trying to make that range even smaller, such that like centrist capitalist liberalism is the far left. And then
Right.
like an actual, you know, socialist perspective isn't even allowed to be spoken of. And you just imagine like, what does it mean for young people to grow up in that context where the entire ideological and economic horizon is neoliberal capitalism, and anything outside of that is just like evil we do not even speak of. And you could definitely see the political and economic ramifications of that down the line. And then, of course, too, like we had someone in the chat earlier. I think I forgot left their, I don't know where their comment is, but they just said they're a school teacher and they recently got told they have to put like "In God We Trust" in their classroom. So also the way as well that it's like there's this reinscription of Christian nationalism potentially happening alongside this as well. It's a bad vibe. Let me ask you,
I would agree.
at least,
Bad vibe.
yeah. Before my final question for you, which is going to be about skateboarding, my penultimate one, and you know, you've done a lot of work on this, so people should go read. I mean, everyone follows Sam's Twitter account in general. We've linked to it a bunch in the chat here. Read the recent thread on cultural Marxism. But we have our next two videos coming out on our channel. One is on wokeness and one is on Marxism. And just because they're things that come up a lot, they're things we've wanted to talk about. What would you say, and I'll let you kind of simplify this because you've written a lot about this. Why is cultural Marxism now another adjacent boogeyman to all this? And why are right-wing politicians, and someone as well asked before about like the broad use of the term right wing. I guess when I say that, at least, I just mean contemporary American Republicans. I know there's people that might be different types of right wing or whatever, but why are we talking about Marxism? Why is this a thing? And maybe it's just another word used to describe everything else you're already talking about. But you know, why are our aunts who watch Fox News calling us to tell us about Marxism?
So I think what happened in the US largely was at the end of the Cold War, the Republicans needed a new enemy to unite their the Republicans in the US for a long time, the Cold War provided them a common enemy figure, right? The communists. It's always the communists. They're the enemy. Once the Cold War is over, now we need a new enemy. And if we're not fighting a Cold War against, so this is the way that Pat Buchanan in the 90s, he had a huge speech at the 1992 Republican National Convention in which he popularized the term culture war, which now is basically an inescapable term in American politics. He would say that from Buchanan's perspective, we won the Cold War against economic Marxism, but the conservatives, they've lost the cultural war against cultural Marxism, right? And so the way that they understand cultural Marxism, according to them, it's basically this idea that where the old orthodox economic Marxists saw the history of the world as the history of class struggle. They understood social relations in terms of a class structure, you know, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Then they, according to them, you know, cultural Marxists, which they see as basically like anyone who adopts any kind of leftist, like academic understanding of ideas like structural racism or any kind of feminist analysis. They see feminism, anti-racism, all this stuff as forms of cultural Marxism, because it says that some people are oppressed and other people are oppressors or something like that. That's sort of the way they see it. And any oppressor-oppressed framework is culturally Marxist. When they say culture, they don't mean often the same things we mean by culture, right? When we say culture, often we're talking about like, movies, music, art, these kinds of things. They include that, but they're thinking much broader, right? They think their culture is this kind of Judeo-Christian values, white Western civilization, right? That's culture to them. And for instance, they saw desegregation, Brown v. Board of Education, as an attack on their culture, their way of life. So these kinds of things, these kinds of ideas that you need to integrate the schools, right? Change things, bring people on a more equal basis, equality of opportunity, rather than letting things be the way they always were, according to them, right? That is this new revolutionary Marxist idea. And according to them, it all goes back to these Jewish, they sometimes are careful to emphasize, Frankfurt School philosophers who they claim wanted to pit racial groups against one another so that they could precipitate the undermining of Western civilization. And James Lindsay will tell you, this is what happened. He's like, he said the Frankfurt School conspiracy theory is dangerously accurate in its details because they really did want to destroy civilization, and they really were all Jews. But he's like, but the reason they did it was because they were communists, not because they were Jewish. It's like, James, you're hanging out with too many Nazis, my friend. And you're surprised that they're encouraging you to take that last step, as he said. And that's what you see today, because the critical race theory, while often, like Rufo doesn't himself employ the term cultural Marxism, I think he is smart enough to know why he shouldn't do that for the purposes of respectability. But he will parrot the exact same line. He will say, Herbert Marcuse had this student, Angela Davis, and that led to the, pitting people against each other, going against the civil rights movement, which shows that they also lack an understanding of the civil rights movement. Of course, they don't understand Martin Luther King. All of these misunderstandings are connected. But the reason we see cultural Marxism is because it's such an effective tool. The Cold War, the term Marxist has been so completely stripped of any meaning. What it means is enemy, right? So cultural Marxists is these people are your cultural enemies. They want to undermine your culture. They want to take away your way of life. They want to, all of these things. I mean, even the idea that they want to take away your gas stoves, you could see as like, this is cultural Marxism. So it just fits so perfectly into the reactionary framework of mind. Is like, these people they hate you. They want to destroy you. They're your enemy. And it fits perfectly as a sort of scapegoat, which the conservative movement always needs. There always needs to be someone who's threatening civilization itself. And sometimes it's a foreign enemy. And in the case of cultural Marxism, it's this internal enemy, these elites at the academic institutions who are teaching your children, brainwashing your children. They've infiltrated every institution, mainstream media, Hollywood, academia, etc. And so it works perfectly.
Yeah, that's great, man. Thanks for sharing that. So yeah, I guess then maybe we'll end with this. Like, I don't know. I wonder if you have any more thoughts on this, but I know all the stuff is that we've been thinking about a lot. We have a very small team. We care about this stuff. And our strategy at this point is just like, let's just show how, in some cases, boring the source text behind some of these things are. So like, for me, sometimes it's like, okay, well, we think Adorno's evil. Let's just read some Adorno and show you guys how Adorno, like, not that evil. I think he had some weird critiques of jazz music.
More weird. Yeah.
Yeah. And the same thing, like, even though after I did this, and I'm sure you've gotten way more shit from him than I have, but I got called unsexy by James Lindsay when I tried to show that he didn't know how to read Hegel. It really hurt. My wife left me. She was like, you know what? If Lindsay, the swordsman, doesn't think you have a sexy voice, I'm out. But like we did a thing on Peterson's reading of Marx, and we worked on it for a while, but eventually found the easiest thing is like, let's just read Marx. Let's just like literally read long quotes from Marx where it's just very clear that he doesn't say what this person says he says, and often says the opposite. And we have another video coming out on Marx next week where we do a similar thing. So sometimes I'm like, maybe the best move is just to try to create situations where people are confronted with what these people really say. And I don't interact with a lot of super like protesting at school board type people, but what are other ways that you think of? And maybe there's none. Maybe we're just. But do you have any thoughts on how someone in a good-natured way can try to do some sort of like ideological pushback on this stuff?
Yeah, I mean that is one very good strategy is to go to the source itself. I think one of the things that the right does very well in its media that often sort of center left, because we don't have a lot of like actual like leftist media in terms of like the mainstream, fail to do is a lot of the times the right is very good at telling stories, right? Framing their information in terms of a narrative that has a clear story, right? The right is telling you this story about cultural Marxists. They hate you. They want to undermine your way of life. They've captured the institutions. This is how they did it. This is what they want. The left doesn't do that in its stories as often, or at least, center left, other people, the non-right, let's say, doesn't do that as well in terms of telling a story about the right? Because you can debunk every fact. You can debunk all of the specific mistakes in a text, and someone is still left with a feeling of like, well, why does what they say feel so correct? Right? If they're making all these factual mistakes, why do I still want to believe that? Right? And that is like a much deeper level to try to sort of, I guess, de-radicalize someone. And I have sort of jumbled thoughts about the efficacy and the sort of value of de-radicalization as like the approach to this stuff. But I think when it does work, it works because someone tells another compelling story and not just debunks and not just pokes holes in all of the other person's story. You have to tell your own story. And that's what
I like that a lot. Yeah.
want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I really feel that. That's why, we put a long quote in our video coming out on Marx where he talks about how like his goal is that you can work a little bit in the day and then go fishing and then read a bit and then spend time with your family. And the ideal view of communism is that like, you work a little bit, you take a stroll, you read to your kids, you criticize, and it's just like, guys, this is pretty boring. It's basically just saying like, wouldn't it be cool if we just had a life where our main purpose wasn't the creation of surplus value, and instead we got to like hang out more, and that's less sexy than the Marxists want to turn your kids into super soldiers. But I think for a lot of people, it's much more compelling. So yeah. Well, Sam, thank you so much for coming and hanging. I will say, I was going to say this before. If anyone doesn't want to follow Sam on social media because you don't want to hear about cultural Marxism, you post pretty good skate videos sometimes too. I will say though, the problem with the skate videos is as a 38-year-old who for the past decade, every 2 years, I'm like, I'm going to skate again. And I do it for like 3 weeks and then fall on my hip and I don't do it for another 2 years. They're great, but they feel like they're trolling me in particular. But
yeah,
but I really
they are
appreciate them.
I've been just engaged in a long cultural Marxist project to get you back into skating, but
I'm trying. There are some public skate parks. Yeah, I got to go. There's a couple skate parks in LA that have like old guy hours early in the day. So I'll have to work on that at some point. Yeah. So
I'll meet you for an old guy sesh if you're down.
Now that I know you're local, I mean, listen, I could use some coaching in that regard. Yeah, until I break my ankle. Is there anything besides, following you, keeping abreast of things you're writing, anything else that people could do to check out your work, see what you're up to, anything like that? Or
yeah, so Twitter. Also, I have a Substack that I haven't used in so long, but I really do want to start posting on that again. And it started with just this kind of project of debunking sort of right wing, especially Lindsay and friends. It's called conceptual disinformation. It's kind of play
Love
on
it.
James Lindsay's his conceptual James. So that's conceptual disinformation.substack.com, and you can subscribe for free to that. Get an email when
Awesome.
I post anything.
Awesome. And the chat just blew up as soon as you talked skateboarding. So they love the idea of radical skateboarding Marxism. Well, Zan, thank you so much for coming through. Hopefully you can come back sometime because something clearly is going to happen in media or news. We're going to need you to explain it to us. So I'll definitely hit you up to come back soon.
All right. Sounds
yeah,
good,
thanks
dude.
for coming through, man. Really appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. All right. Take care, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. Cool. Everyone, that was Sam Hoadley-Brill. You can follow him on Twitter in there. Writer, researcher, PhD student, skateboarder. And thanks for hanging out, guys. I really appreciate everyone watching that conversation. Today was like the double bind where sometimes it's hard for me to be like a good conversationalist and engage in chat. But today it's been fun. Aaron already says, please come back. Wow. Oh, Gordon says critical skate theory. Sam, I wish Sam was still here. Sam needs to make shirts or hats or something that say critical skate theory on them, because I think that would be really fun. But again, interesting conversation. And I think, again, with all this stuff right now, the important thing here is always asking, we always do this, guys, right? Why are people mad? What are they criticizing? But what is really going on underneath that thing, right? Is someone's critical project aiming at a reevaluation of society to make education more equitable? Or is their critical project aiming at restricting the information that can be communicated in a public education system? And so on and so forth. Someone said, what is the meaning of based versus woke? I need the chat to do this because I know that you can do this. Someone said, what are the two jobs that Mike Wood could do? You know the two jobs he could do. You guys know. But yeah, and we don't always have to agree with all the stuff being said. You don't have to be, I mean, in this sense too, I hope it's important to note as well, you don't have to be like a critical theorist. You don't have to be a Marxist radical to be able to see what's going on sometimes in some of these folks that are criticizing, cultural Marxism, critical theory, all this sort of stuff. You could be a pretty soft lib and still see that what they're doing is not the best. But I do think as well, I really like a point that Sam made about like political narrativization, that the right has gotten good at telling stories and their compelling narratives. And I think regardless of whether you're right, left, center, up, down, top, bottom, to the value of storytelling and the value of being able to have so important. What are the two jobs Popper could do? I feel like I only know one of those. Oh, I know two. I know the two. Jack Healy says, where do you stand on the political compass? My politics are that I think everyone should have a good life that prioritizes their humanity above anything else, and that we should have a fundamental attitude of empathy towards other people. That's, Jack, that's what I'll say is my political starting point. If you haven't liked the stream yet, please do it on the way out. Julia said, what am I supposed to do to listen for the next hour of work when this ends? Let's see. And Rudy, thanks for being here. You'll catch us soon. Julia, go check out the FD Signifier video on his B-Sides channel with our buddy Jackson. That could be a cool thing to watch. Alice Capel, who came on the stream a few weeks ago, she has a new video on celibacy. I want to watch that. We were going to maybe watch it on stream today. You could check that out.
Yes.
Any recommendations you have for Julia, Henry?
Damn, I don't know anything under an hour, but I did yesterday watch The Sweet Smell of Success on Tubi, which is like a 1950s noir movie. It was extremely good.
Whoa. Oh, that's amazing. Well, guys, Helbrecht said, oh, are we wrapping up? We're wrapping up. Not going to promote Vox. What did Vox do? You know how much we promote Christopher Maverick. I feel like sometimes all Wisecrack Live is one long commercial for the various projects and doings of Dr. Christopher Maverick, PhD, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So yes, follow Vox Podcast, whatever Chris does, say it's good, but it just kind of at a certain point when is just promoting him constantly. Yeah, he sends threatening letters to my house, so I'm going to keep doing it. Amini said, wait, tell us again about the celibacy video. It's on Alice Capel's YouTube channel. It's her most recent video. So if you just type in Alice Capel, I think Cappelle, you will see it. And yeah, Chris is laughing at me because he knows that I'm his puppet. I'm a pawn in his game. You all know this too. It is what it is. Yeah, Henry was on his show. And that's the thing too. I also know he's trying to get Henry. I know, I see what you're doing.
I was
Chris.
on the show with Lux.
I know, and I know he's trying to get you guys. I know what he's doing. He's trying to
great conversation.
Slowly go. Sure it is. Okay, guys. This has been Wisecrack Live for June 15th. We'll see you soon. Oh, here's the thing, guys. If you haven't been paying attention, I'm just going to say it now. We probably only have 2 or 3 more Wisecrack Lives for a little bit before I go on paternal leave. So if you're liking it, get involved now. You don't want to miss the next few weeks. But yeah, let's call it there. This is Wisecrack Live. Thanks to Henry. Thanks to our patron saint, Dr. Christopher Maverick, PhD. And we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for chatting, y'all.